So tonight you're going to get a glimpse of the great work that Green Card Voices has been doing this past year from co-leader Thea Rozman. Thea was born in Yugoslavia and moved to the US at the age of 20 after receiving the George Soros Scholarship to study at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. She later continued her education at the New York University and University of Nova Gorica. In 2013, she received a PhD in cultural history, specializing in oral history recording, and has since committed her life to healing trauma, empowerment, and amplifying the voices of immigrants and refugees. In 2013, Thea co-founded Green Card Voices and soon after was recognized with a two-year Bush Fellowship, allowing her to pursue studies in social entrepreneurship and leadership at the U of M, Harvard, and Stanford. She and her team have recorded and shared stories of over 500 immigrants and refugees coming from 150 countries and living in Minnesota, North Dakota, Wisconsin, New York, California, and Georgia. She's the co-editor of GCV's 10 award-winning books. Thea is passionate about travel, running, hiking, and spending time with her loved ones. So I hope that you guys can just help me give a warm welcome to Thea Rozman.
Good afternoon. Stories are sacred. Stories heal. Stories expose truths, and they deepen our understanding. Today, I'd like to share with you 3 stories that have marked the past year at Green Card Voices. The first is the pandemic story, or as I like to call it, pivot like never before. The second story is the racial justice story, or as I like to call it, fight like never before. And the third story is the story of Green Card Voices' upcoming book, Our Stories Carried Us Here, or as I like to call it, tell stories like they've never been told before. The pandemic that began in 2019 and raged until just recently really changed our lives. A year ago, most of us, including me, had never spent much time thinking about distance learning or becoming proficient with Zoom or dealing with the daily challenges of life in quarantine. I certainly did not know that the word pivot would become the most used jargon word in the nonprofit world, surpassing even resource mobilization and impact, just a couple of the past favorites. But as with most changes, there are some negatives and some positives. For example, many of us spend less time in traffic because we're working from home, but spend more on electricity bills. We learned the good habit of proper hand washing, and we experienced the craziness of hoarding toilet paper. People started baking, assembling puzzles. In turn, the sales of yeast nearly doubled, while sales of puzzles tripled. It's too bad Green Card Voices is not in the yeast nor puzzle business. We are in publishing. And with bookstores closed, libraries and schools going online, things were not looking great for our bottom line. And here's where the word pivot became a fine line. Staying at home and online learning increased our sales of our ebooks. And the team here at Green Card Voices pivoted and invested in making our library ebook friendly so that educators and families could access our books and curriculum digitally. What the pandemic reminded us is that life is precious and short. We feared for our loved ones with pre-existing conditions, and some of us lost people closest to us. The pandemic reminded us how difficult it is to live life in isolation, how lonely it is. We missed our loved ones, we missed our friends, and we missed our neighbors. And because people needed connection, Green Card Voices pivoted again and developed a virtual story stitch game that included some COVID-19 questions to help people process. It was a big hit and led us to develop an e-course for story stitch facilitators. pivot like never before intention is what ultimately sustained us. This brings me to the second story, the racial justice story, or as I like to call it, fight like never before. On May 25th, 2020, George Floyd's murder woke up the nation and reignited the fight for Black lives. The uprising that followed reflected deep historic frustration with the criminal legal system and anger at the systemic racism prevalent in policing that far too often leads to a disproportionate number of Black men, women, and children being killed by people sworn to protect them. We found ourselves in the heart of the movement as our office is located just a few blocks away from the George Floyd, where he was murdered, and in the shadow of his memorial. Our staff and board volunteered at the food donation sites and joined the protests. And most importantly, always emphasized that immigrant justice is inextricably linked to racial justice. We recommitted to the intersectional work and in response, developed a new Beyond Allyship podcast series, produced community stories, hired new curriculum writers, and transitioned Green Card Voices to a co-leadership model. Our city fought like never before, and this gave us the inspiration and renewed commitment to dismantling systemic racism, beginning with internal changes first. And this brings me to my third and final story. Green Card Voices' newest publication, Our Stories Carried Us Here. We know that stories matter deeply. It's core to our work. In this book in particular, strives to pave the way for a more inclusive and supportive society by empowering immigrant authors and readers alike to address issues of racial inequity and develop deeper racial and cross-cultural understanding. This book is a bold and unconventional anthology of stories where storytellers and illustrators come from the same ethnic, linguistic, cultural, and regional backgrounds. Nothing like this has ever been done before. It's also the first time we've included bilingual storytelling, which captures the realism in the dialogue. But most importantly, the anthology centers on complex and difficult issues, such as the ways in which identities and bodies are marked by race, religion, class, educational inequality, systemic displacement, discrimination, mental health, disability, activism, and so much more. These stories reclaim the narrative that has so often been shaped by hate, fear, and xenophobia. Today, graphic novels are one of the most popular media for young and adult readers. They're both engaging and accessible. Green Card and its newest book, Our Stories Carried Us Here, acts as a mirror and light to connect us all with immigrant and refugee experiences that both inspire hope and empathy. We believe this book has the potential to engage the reader with society's most complicated social and political contexts through distinct and diverse perspectives, and to counter the rise of xenophobia and racism targeting so many communities today. We are grateful to the 500 Kickstarter supporters that made the printing of the book possible. And finally, my deep gratitude goes to our incredible staff, dedicated board of directors, funders, and donors for helping us use the art of storytelling to build the bridges between immigrants and their communities. Thank you for being here today and being part of this work. Now let's watch Our Stories Carried Us Here video that won over the Kickstarter community.
My name is Gala. I'm a cartoonist and illustrator. I was born in China.
My name is Marianne Quiroz,
My name is Sergio Quiroz.
and we are the co-directors and co-founders of Indigenous Roots.
My name is Amara Solomon Kamara. I was born in Liberia.
My name is Tom Kaczynski, and I'm a cartoonist. I draw comics.
Hi, my name is Zainab Abdi, and I am an immigrant from Yemen and Somalia.
Hello everyone, my name is Julie Vane.
And my name is Rozman.
And we are the co-editors of
Our Stories Carried Us Here, graphic novel anthology. 2 years ago, we had this idea to collaborate with 10 different immigrant illustrators and co-create 10 immigrant refugee stories in a comic format.
Our goal was amplifying the voices of immigrants and refugees, but doing it in a way that's never been done before.
I think it's important to let immigrants tell their own story.
It was just so amazing to see, to reflect back on my story, my grandma, people I love, and the journey, the hardship journey that I went through, but also like how those graphic novels put some image and beauty in those stories.
When you talk about immigrant, it's almost like a stigma that people think that you're worthless, you're not educated, and you're just here to take away from them.
I think for me, what I was most excited about was the fact that this graphic novel has a target audience of our young readers.
We tell our story so much orally, and by word of mouth. So I think this is just another avenue, another great way to tell our story, in a graphic novel.
Working with Alex, who's from Kazakhstan. So it's really, I'm from Poland originally. So it's really interesting to kind of see his experience, which is kind of a post-Soviet country, and coming to America.
Last month, we were able to print 120 copies in black and white and gave them to the community to read. The responses have been overwhelmingly positive.
So we decided to do this Kickstarter and raise money to print 10,000 copies in full color. Help us create resources that fight xenophobia and strengthen our multi-ethnic democracy.
On behalf of over 50 million immigrants in the United States,
We thank you.
感谢你的支持。
Muchísimas gracias por su apoyo.
شكرا لمساعدتكم
Maraming salamat sa inyong suporta.
Ainike alabaranuma, ainike.
ومحسنته.
Dziękuję bardzo za wasze poparcie.
That was so great. I had a really good time putting that video together and working with the team, so still gives me the chills. Well, now I want to turn things over and to introduce you to GCV co-leader, Aaliyah Hanna, who will fill you in on what's in the future for GCV. Aaliyah is a proud Southside Chicagoan. She received her BBA in Criminal Justice and Political Science from UW-Platteville. Aaliyah has been with Green Card Voices for almost 2 years now, and as a co-leader, she focuses her work on finance and operations. Aaliyah has also been a key contributor to GCV's Story Stitch Facilitator e-learning training. Aaliyah, take it over.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. I would like to share some stories with you too, stories focused on the future of Green Card Voices. As Taya mentioned, it has been quite a challenging year in many ways. So it's not really surprising to hear many people expressing their excitement about getting back to normal. But here at Green Card Voices, we're also excited for the normality of museums, libraries, and schools opening back up. We're excited that the stories so generously shared with us over the last year will get to be shared with the larger community now. For example, our Green Card STEM Voices exhibit joined the Smithsonian's The Bias Inside Us exhibition at the Science Museum of Minnesota from January till May 2021. This was the first time post-COVID that we received a request for one of our traveling exhibits, and it felt so great to see our work in the lobby of the museum. However, when it comes to making our communities an inclusive and safe place for immigrants and refugees to thrive, The old normal is not what we need. When we look into the future work at Green Card Voices, our planning focuses on how we can make new inroads here in Minnesota and nationally to raise up immigrant stories, to shine light on injustice, xenophobia, and racism, and to create more ways to help organizations and communities collaborate effectively in order to build bridges of understanding and empathy. Taya has also mentioned the Story Stitch Facilitator e-training and the expansion of the questions to help people process COVID-19. As we did with our collaboration with the Science Museum and Arts Midwest, where we developed questions focusing on bias in the STEM and arts field, we are continuing to expand the reach of Story Stitch into new communities across the Midwest and beyond. This also includes making this powerful resource accessible to individuals whose first language is not English. But now, I'd like to tell you about 2 future projects that I hope will excite you as well. Thanks to the generosity of the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation, the Minneapolis Foundation, and the Minnesota Humanities Center, we will produce and release our first illustrated children's book. Once again, we are co-creating to make this book a reality. Our co-creators are students and storytellers of Washburn and Edison High Schools in Minneapolis and Humboldt High School in St. Paul, who will share stories to help younger children learn about their neighbors, friends, and classmates who are immigrants and refugees. Another really important and amazing project that we are in the process of creating is a new collection of stories focused on immigrant and refugee artists. We're calling this collection Green Card Artist Voices. With funding provided by Arts Midwest, we already have 6 stories recorded, so we're off to a great start. And this new collection of stories is to uplift the immigrants and refugees in their art of storytelling that is not done just through the written word, but also through visual art, theater, and music. And this brings me to you. So we hope this idea excites you, and we hope you will want to be a part of making it a reality and assisting with community outreach initiatives. This year, our Fund the Need donations will go directly to the Green Card Artist Voices project. But our authors and artists can tell the story better than I can, so let's hear from them with an amazing video that was put together.
I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. I was born in Laos, inside Laos, which is northern Laos.
I was born in the capital city of Togo, which is Lomé.
I was born in Des Moines, Iowa, because my dad's journey story brought him to Des Moines. When we asked about our home country, they just said that we lost the country and it now belongs to Vietnam. And so when people ask me what country I'm from, I really don't have an answer.
Called African Arts Arena, and it was created out of the need to try to create space for new immigrant of African descent. I am the executive director for Center for Arts and Talent.
I'm executive director of Northwest Iowa.
This organization helps me do what I've always wanted to do, and that is support and pave the way for artists, especially filmmakers, because that's the field where I was passionate in.
I am the executive director of Walker's Point Center for the Arts. So I started the SEED project, which stands for Southeast Asian Diaspora. The mission of the Thai Study Center is to help preserve our Thai language, culture, and history.
My connection to art and especially storytelling happened very early.
So immediately after I graduated from college, I volunteered to help the Thai Study Center. And the mission of the Thai Study Center is to help preserve our Thai language, culture, and history, and to spread the awareness. And so that really resonated with me. You know, a big turning point for me was, being part of my high school forensics team. So that's, competitive public speaking, and I would be in the poetry category. That's where I started off because, I was very much attracted to the way that folks manipulated and use words to just tell beautiful stories. I've always loved the arts, and I appreciate the arts so much because I know
as someone who deals with mental health, if I did not have the arts, I would not be here. Like I would be dead. So I love the arts. Not the best visual artist, but I appreciate the ability and the healing power that art has.
Our communities that I was working with was trying to figure out how do we move our communities in a way, mobilize them in a way where it actually feels meaningful for them, accessible to how they are, how they participate in issues that impact them and their well-being.
As a community, we needed a place to go to mourn or to talk about things that we wouldn't talk about publicly. So, and we also wanted to celebrate, part of our culture so that we feel like we are still alive. The main goal of the organization is also to use art to talk about inclusivity and diversity.
Art Force Iowa is working on creating this whole digital archive, and we want community members to tell us their stories and their histories, because if we don't do that, like they die. Those histories, they just disappear. We, as the Dice Study Center, need to write our history ourselves.
When I think of the arts in a dominant way of thinking about the arts is something that's elite, it's something for rich people to enjoy. And to me it's like, how do we flip that the other way, especially when we come from cultures where art is living, where you are culture.